Start recording this. All right. So hopefully you guys can see the PowerPoint presentation. All right. So today we're going to be talking about lighting and value studies. All right. Give me one moment. We're going to talk about lighting and value studies. All right. We're going to talk about why lighting matters, the types of lighting, Photoshop tools for values. I'm going to show you guys a demo, which I just kind of pulled up out of the way there. Some common mistakes, the assignment, and then we're going to close the class. All right. So I'm going to start with kind of some quotes for some artists over the years. So art teaches you the philosophy of life. And if you can't learn it from art, you can't learn it at all. It shows you that there is no perfection. There is light and there is shadow. Everything is in half tint. All right, so this is a quote from William Morris Hunt, great artist. So this other one is from Francisco Goya. He says, in art, there is no need for color. I see only light and shade. Give me a crayon and I will paint your portrait. So I kind of chose these quotes because they relate obviously to shading, lighting, value, but they also kind of give you guys like the bare minimums, the bare bone structure of what we consider the basics of shading and lighting, and how important that would be. When I consider the work of value when it comes to the overall, and when I say the overall kind of, when you're looking at the big picture of concept art, design, anything like that, value, lighting, shading, it does a lot of heavy lifting. You can understand a lot of a picture just based on the value, the range, just because you can convey a lot of style, a lot of emotion, a lot of feeling just through how you use your lighting. You can make it look super contrasted. You can make it look super washed out. You can make it look almost black and white, right? So you can evoke a lot of emotion just using lighting and values alone, right? From day to night, right? From the darks to the lights, the grays, even in between, all of it plays a part in our visual and how we denote form, structure, right? Depending on how sharp a dark line is, will tell you if if an edge is really sharp or it's soft and rounded, right? So these are things that are super important when it comes to art in general, when it comes to design and style and form and function and things like that, where if you can nail down your values, if you can nail down how the values of your pieces, if you can nail down the lighting, right? You can tell a lot of the story just by lighting, right? You can use overhead lighting. Think about like any detective movie or any like what's it, CSI or any of those, right? When they're doing the interrogation scene, nothing makes a character feel more lonely and isolated than the overhead light shining down on them, right? Everything else is in complete darkness, right? Those kind of things, the lighting itself just evokes that emotion. This character is isolated, they're alone, it's them versus them, right? You can easily use lighting to do a lot of that, right? So That is why it's very important when you guys are learning, when you guys are trying to get better at concept art and concept art theory, is to understand the role that value and lighting plays in a lot of the work, right? So the objectives of this kind of lesson is to hopefully help you guys understand how light sources affect from form and depth. Learn the difference between direct light, ambient light, and rim lighting. Just a basic 3-point light setup. If you've taken any of my other classes, I've probably talked about 3-point light setup, just because I've taught ZBrush, 3D modeling, and it's just a basic lighting in general, right? It's just like the basics of good lighting, right? We're also going to talk about exploring the role of value, light, dark contrast, and composition and mood. And we're going to apply grayscale studies to strengthen design clarity before adding color. And color is almost like the icing on the cake. And that's how I want you guys to think about it. Like, color is the icing, right? That's the icing when it comes to all of this stuff. And it's not the cake itself. The cake is your structure, the values, the contrast, right? That's the meat and the potatoes, right, of the whole thing. And then when you add color, it just accentuates and it makes it all look even better. All right. So like I said before, I'm gonna send all of you guys these PowerPoints so you guys can use. This is a super valuable resource for me whenever feel like I'm stuck. I'm trying to learn something. These guys, Proco TV, I'm pretty sure it's like this guy's last name. He's a really good artist, really awesome artist, and he has a YouTube channel that he does where he teaches all the different fundamentals and things like that. And I always like to kind of give you guys some resources. There's also guys like Glenn Keane who are out there that you guys can definitely check out any video on him, any books on him. Check out any books on Glenn Vilppu. Really, really good. Anything usually from the Gnomon workshop. They really do really good work. And if you're looking for a really good concept artist, mentor kind of person to follow on YouTube, there's also this guy called Feng Zhu. Probably some of the best concept art, just lessons, teachings, the way he speaks about it. It makes you really feel understood. It makes it really palatable. It makes it really understandable, digestible, right? And that's what I like about a lot of the stuff that I'm going to try to give you guys, and I want to try to present to you guys, is things that are very easy to digest, and it's not going to be overtly complex, right? Because you can really get into the nitty of the gritty when it comes to a lot of this stuff. But I want this to be easily digestible. I want you guys to be able to take it and be like, all right, I understand that concept. And if I practice that concept, I'll get better at that concept and not feel overwhelmed by any of these concepts. So he's got a few here. So I'm going to do this lighting and shadow one. It's about 8 minutes long. But I'm going to...
We know that perspective...
to play it and then talk through it. And yeah. And then I'll leave you guys to watch the rest of them yourselves, because I don't want this to be a watch party, right? This isn't a watch party. I have a lesson plan for you guys, and I want to take you guys through my stuff. So let's watch this video.
Perspective adds depth to our drawings, but perspective alone isn't enough to make a drawing look realistic. The trick is often in effectively shading light and shadow. Understanding how light interacts with form is a big deal if you want to start shading. I would argue that proper shading has an even bigger impact on depth and realism than perspective. Sorry, Marshall. Oh. I've seen many students struggle with this. They draw beautiful outlines, but then completely flatten their forms with incorrect shading. Let's not do that anymore. Let's learn how to shade. The key to throwing shade is knowing your target's insecurities and hitting them with surgical precision. You need to observe their weaknesses, understand their vulnerabilities, and then deliver a perfectly timed comment that leaves them questioning their life choices. What's up, nerd? Planes. When light hits an object, it reveals the object's planes. Imagine them as small, flat tiles spread across the surface. The planes facing the light will be lighter than the planes facing away. Adding another plane between these introduces a new intermediate value. So when we shade, every value change that we make on a form suggests a plane change. We're gonna draw balls, and balls are smooth. Well,
Pause.
at least this one is. This ball is smooth. But even on smooth forms, thinking of them as composed of many smaller planes helps you imagine how the form turns. Planes facing the light are part of the light family, and planes facing away are part of the shadow family. When we shade, we need to clearly communicate which parts of the object are in light and which are in shadow. This simple organization of values into two families does the most in communicating form. It's not everything, but it's definitely the place to start. If you want to level up your shading, go check out the full course at proco.com/drawing. We go deeper into the fundamentals and even have guest instructors like Steve Houston. Parts of light and shadow. Let's start simple. A sphere on a surface with one light source. Light on...
And I do go into more of an academic, more in-depth look at how light works. If you go into my YouTube channel and you look for, it's something I taught at Richland Community College. It's PBR lighting. It's on my YouTube channel, and if you want to check that out, I go through essentially the academic, process of how light works, how it refracts and reflects on different objects, how you guys should be taking it, how surface affects lighting, microfaceting. I go through the PBR workflow, which is the physically based rendering workflow. And if you want to learn more about lighting and how it affects everything, I even go through some of the math behind it. And if you want to check any of that out, it's on my YouTube channel for free as well. You don't have to pay for this guy's course to do any of that. I go through all of how it works, and I also have a PowerPoint as well that you can have. So
form is typically broken down into distinct zones. You'll see the divisions more clearly on simple forms with simple lighting. But once you get it, you can apply it to anything. Before we get into the details, let's quickly introduce the elements of light on form. First, there's the terminator.
Hasta la vista.
No distractions, let's keep going. The terminator is the edge where light transitions into shadow. Beyond it is the form shadow, the area that's turned away from the light source. It's different from the cast shadow, which occurs when an object blocks light from hitting another surface. On the lit side, we have the center light, that's the point facing directly toward the light source. As the form turns away from the center light, we see darker and darker halftones until they reach the terminator.
Baby.
And then it becomes shadow. Highlights are reflections of the light source itself, so you won't see them on matte materials. Within the shadows, reflected light, that's light bouncing around the environment,
So as you guys can see, whenever light comes, depending on what direction it's coming from, if it bounces on a surface with some sort of diffuse, some sort of color, it's going to reflect that light. So that's why you can see some yellow happening over here. It's not like there's a yellow light. No, it's just reflecting, right? Some of the light as it's bouncing. Some of the light that's happening over here, some of it will get absorbed by this material. Whatever can't be absorbed, right? Whatever part of these particles that the light rays are sending out that can be absorbed is what's getting reflected back as diffuse lighting into this.
Is into the shadow and gently lightens some of it. The darkest part of a form shadow is usually along the terminator.
I'll be back.
No, please don't come back. The darkest part along the terminator is called the core shadow. And finally, occlusion shadows. You'll see them in tight crevices where objects touch.
That's where we get the term in 3D modeling, ambient occlusion, right? The occlusion is where this object is touching, right? It's occluded, right? Hidden by this object, and that's what's creating this very harsh shadow. And if you look at the way the shadow itself transitions, you can see that the further out it goes from the contact, right? This contact point, the more that shadow dissipates, and then it gets super fuzzy, and you can even see that it's trailing out back.
Occlusion shadows are commonly the darkest values.
Yep.
They're like...
he said it after I said it. But yeah, because of where this contact is meeting, right? This object is meeting the table, you're going to get the harshest possible shadow. And as it goes further back out, you're going to get lighter.
The highlights of the shadow family. The value structure. You already know how to think in terms of limited value groups like light, medium, and dark. Let's use that to group the elements we just learned into value zones with hard edges. No blending or gradations, let's just observe the values. Separate the light and shadow by blocking in your entire shadow area with a darker value, representing the reflected light. You're saying, this is the lightest that the shadow can get. In the light family, I like to think of 3 values. If the form you're drawing is very matte, without a clear highlight, then I'll use 3 values for the halftones. The lightest halftone zone is the biggest, and the dark halftone is the smallest. If the form does have a highlight, then I'll simplify the halftones to just dark halftone and light halftone. I'll use that 3rd value, the brightest value, for a clear highlight shape. In the shadow family, within the form shadow, I like to think of just 2 values. The value we put down originally to define the shadow is the reflected light. It's the lightest part of the shadow. So let's add a darker value for the core shadow. We can give the occlusion shadow the same value as the core, and we would have a total of 5 values. And this is my favorite way to map out the values. We have 3 in the lights and 2 in the shadows, favoring more detail and complexity in the lights. In reality though, the occlusion shadow is usually even darker than the core shadow. And sometimes, depending on the environment and how much light bounces back into the cast shadow, the rest of the cast shadow might be darker too, closer to the value of the core shadow. And as cast shadows go farther away from the object, the edges get softer. So if you want to get really technical, you can use some of the values from the light family to transition the cast shadow into the light around those blurry edges. So shading form isn't as simple as smudging gradations across our shapes, unfortunately. It's never a linear gradation from light to shadow. Instead, we bounce around a bit. Some steps are subtle, others are more dramatic. The transitions within the lighter halftones are very subtle, while the jump from halftone to core shadow is usually quicker and more obvious. And after the core shadow, we get lighter again because of the reflected lights. And then darker for the occlusion, and lighter again as the occlusion transitions to the cast shadow. Of course, this is just a simplified example to help you understand the relationships. This pattern and these values I used here are not a hard rule. The exact value steps will vary based on the object and the light source. But this is a good starting point to get familiar with a common pattern you'll see. What matters most is maintaining the correct relationship between these values. As you practice, you'll develop an intuition for how light describes form, and you'll be more comfortable with all the subtle shifts in value that create realistic depth. You'll start to feel when a value or transition is wrong. Light and shadow are tools to create the illusion of 3 dimensions on a flat surface. Master these tools, and your drawings won't look flat. This is just a sample of the premium course in drawing basics.
Okay, so with that being said, I did want to take us into this quick demo. All right, so this is a program called Twinmotion, and I just wanted to show you guys, just kind of taking that idea, just taking it just a little further, so I could show it to you guys in 3D. So what I've taken is I've got this sphere here, and I've got this, it's, you know, this little background, and I wanted to kind of show you guys. Let's go. Have any media? Have any videos? No. Let's go F to frame it in our view here. Oops. I'm just going to add an image, and then I'm going to add a video. All right. I do this to show you guys one of two things. Let's go through the ambient phase of here. So this right here is my environment preset. And what I can do is I can go from HDRI, which is it's a single image, and I can rotate it or use a dynamic sky. I'm going to use a dynamic sky for now, just so I can show you guys this really cool feature. So if this sphere was outside, and as you can see, as I move the sunlight, right, as it rises, gets to its zenith, its peak, and then it comes all the way around, you can see how that highlight, right, based on our viewing angle, can change, right? You can see easily that depending on the time of the day, my highlight, my core shadows, the terminator right here, this termination line, right, it changes depending on where my light source is throughout the day. And we're imagining we're using the sun as our light source. Right now, the sun is our light source. And you can see as the sun moves, that hot spot right here moves with it, because this is the spot. Imagine the sunlight. This is the most direct spot that the sunlight is hitting. And then the rest of that light gets diffused all around, right? And if we look at the shadow, right, and how the shadow works, right, the sun right here is behind us, right here. So now that the sun is behind us, we can't see that hot spot because it's probably like either on this edge or right over here somewhere, all right? And now we can see that our shadow, because of how the light is positioned, is facing towards us, right? And we've still got more of an even shading, and what we're seeing here, right, because of how the light works, it's bouncing lighting information from this floor, from this little pedestal thing, and it's bouncing it back, right back into our sphere, right? So the entire environment itself is lighting our sphere. And that's how you guys have to start thinking about lighting, is that even though there's one source affecting it, there's things that happen called bounce lighting, ambient lighting, rim lighting, reflection that happens depending. Also, this depends on our surface as well. So let's look at the surface so I can explain this to you as well. So if I go into my surface here and I just change its roughness intensity, you can see that the rougher I make it, right, the less reflection we're going to get, right? I don't have as much smoothness on my surface, so it's not catching any of those reflection. If I go back into my ambient and, whoops, let's go back here. and I change how my light source, you can still see all of those principles in effect. I'm just not getting the property of reflection anymore. I'm still going to get a hot spot, right? And what's happening is now is that because of that, it's diffused, right? We're getting a more diffused lighting setup. All of the things that are happening in the world are still happening. I've still got my sun, right? But you can now see where my halftone has moved to. All right, let's get back into the lecture.
Let's talk about how we actually.
So now let's talk about value. Value is a range of contrast from light to dark. Value can be used to depict volumes, receding, or show embossment of shapes. Value can also be used to express light and shadow. Some of the common terms of light and shadow on an object are highlight, halftone, core shadow, reflected light, reflective cast shadow, and then the mirror image if you've got like a mirror reflection on the floor. And why all of this matters is because it helps us define forms, it helps us create mood, and it helps direct the viewer's eye. And it helps build a lot of believability, right? You can tell that this is a painting by John Singer Sargent, and you can tell that just because of the way he's using light and contrast, all of this is in shadow. Where does your eye go directly? Right here. Your eye goes right here because of how well he's using that light shadow contrast. All right. Light gives objects their three-dimensional quality by defining highlights, midtones, and shadow. Changing the angle or intensity of the light source alters the appearance of volumes and depth. We'll explore how cast shadows interact with surrounding surfaces, how bounce light can subtly brighten shadowy areas, and by observing simple geometric forms, spheres, cubes, cones, we'll practice breaking down light into core shadow, reflected light, and highlight zones. All right. So let's talk about the types of light you're going to encounter. All right. So let me add another light to this scene right here. All right, so all I did was just put this guy in a box. Okay, this is why it's a projector light. Let's go back to my lights. Just want to drop a spotlight in here. All right. So I just dropped a spotlight in here. Increase the attenuation. Boom. All right. So there are several types of light that you guys should be aware of. So there's a direct light, which is a key light, which is usually a strong primary light source that creates direct shadows, very distinct and high contrast, useful for clarity and focus. All right. So if you wanted to create something like that, you would use something like an omni light. All right. So let me hide this light. So you would use something like an omni light. So this is what I would consider a decent kind of direct light. All right. So then there's something called an ambient light, which is a soft, diffuse light that fills the environment evenly, reducing contrast, often used to simulate daylight or cloudy conditions. So let's move this guy over a little bit, right? So this is going to be my direct key light. I'm trying to create a distinct harsh shadow with it. So maybe we move it over here, right? We're getting a good shadow game right there. Let me turn that off. Turn off my spotlight. So we're getting good shadow game right there, right? All right, so the next thing I would want to create is kind of like an ambient light. So yeah, I would either use an area or another omni. So maybe let's create another omni light. I'm just going to pull this guy up, our second omni. And as you guys can see, it's now, right? It's now given us a lot of, so what I'm going to do is, okay, let me back up a little bit so you guys can see what's going on here. So right now I've got this sphere, right? And as you guys can see, the sphere, it's called the attenuation. And the attenuation just talks about how far spread our light is. And because this is supposed to be my ambient light, which is supposed to fill the room, right? Which is this box that we've got here. I want to have it attenuate out all the way, almost eliminating, right, all of the harsh shadows that we would usually get. All right. So like to do that, I would increase the attenuation. And you guys can see as I increase the attenuation, right, it fills, it spills, it pours into the room. So another thing is, let me move it a little closer to the middle. Right. I'm also going to turn off our other omni light here, just so you guys can see what this ambient light can really do. Right. If we, I'm going to put it like right here. And then if I increase the attenuation, you can see how it kind of fills the room up. Right. It fills the room. The room went from kind of this blue, dark grayish hue. Right. And now what I want to do is maybe reduce the intensity a little bit, right? Lighting is supposed to be super subtle, right? We've got our high contrast, right? This gives us our high contrast. And for this ambient, because it's supposed to fill the room, right? We can even do with moving it forward a little bit. Maybe increasing the attenuation, intensity a little bit. All right. And now you can see I've almost pretty much eliminated all of the shadow here. All right. So the next thing I'm going to add is a rim light, or what people like to call like a backlight. All right. So I'm going to use let's just stick with our omnis. Our omnis are pretty good. So but the only difference now between this omni and the other ones is I'm going to add a color to it. I'm going to change the color temperature so that you guys can see it in full effect. All right. I'm going to add maybe like a reddish kind of hue so that now, right, we're getting, you see this backlight, commonly referred to as a rim light as well. So we can go to this guy, maybe increase the intensity a little bit. I don't want to see, the attenuation would just make it spill into the background. I don't want it to do that. I just want it to affect my object, right? I just wanted to give it this rim light, because another thing that rim lights do is if you're doing portraiture, if you're into portrait work, what rim lights also do is they can help you separate your character from your background, in the way that, because you're adding this rim light, what it's doing is it's almost acting like an outline for your character. And it's a good way to separate your foreground elements from your background elements, right? So like, as you guys can see, whenever I turn off this omni light, our rim light, let me rename it. Let me see, can I rename it? Yeah. Omni light directional. I'm going to do underscore rim light. Right. And what I can do is, let me bring it over a little bit here so we can, just for demonstration purposes, we can see it a little bit better. Right. So we're getting that kind of rim light. And another way to, some people can do it is maybe, let's see, should we use a spot or... that's fine. So let's see, let's change the temperature a little bit. I change the attenuation. All right. So what I just did is I went into the properties just to enable the shadows that it would create, just because I want it to be a little more realistic so I can show you guys. All right. So as you guys can see, this, let's break it down once again. Let's remove the spot. So no lighting, so base lighting, right? If we added our direct light, let's rename this guy underscore direct. So here's our direct light, right? We've got good source right there, right? We can even, if we wanted to, we can probably increase the lighting. I don't know, maybe reduce it a little bit. See and we can mess with the attenuation so that it goes right about there. I enabled the shadow so you guys can see the shadow game that's going on. So we've got this dark. So this is already, right, just starting. This is a very interesting image. Let me, whoops. I want to move it closer. Refresh this, and now I'm going to turn off all the lights. So now we've got our direct. And then if we turn on our ambient, you can see what happens there. Let's rename this. So this is our ambient light. And then once we introduce the rim, reduce the intensity a little bit, right? And it kind of breaks up the background from the foreground, right? You can see that, okay, there's a harsh stop of red from here to there, right? So this is a way that you guys can use to control how your lighting looks, right? See how it doesn't spill all the way over? I can get it just about right here, right? So this is like a good kind of 3-point light setup. All right. So, and the beauty is you can easily start to change the mood of your scene, right? Just by how so this is a spotlight. If you wanted that hot spot, then maybe you could let's go back here. So this is how you would create it artificially. All right. And then if we remove the box, remove the spotlight. All right, let's go to our ambience. Move this box and then turn off this render setting. And then we can add how day and night affects all of that. Try this. All right. So that is going to be it for today's lecture. Let me pull up what the assignment's going to be for the class. And there's going to be a small quiz on this, about 10 or so questions, multiple choice, true, false, that you guys can take on Brightspace. So definitely go attempt those. Let me know. And yeah, let me Let me pull up the assignment as well. Okay, yeah, so the assignment is essentially 3 grayscale lighting studies. Choose a simple object like a sphere, cube, a character bust, small prop or something. Just pick something and just make it in grayscale. Do a lighting study for it and then post it on your forum. All right. The assignment should also be popping up in Brightspace as the class ends, so you should be able to see it. And it talks about some of the lighting stuff as well. So yeah, check it out. Let me know if you guys have any questions or anything. And yeah, you guys are free to go.
That's it.
Alrighty, I'll see you guys Wednesday. Yeah, have a good rest of your week.
You too. Thank you.